get a lot of people telling me, I should publish romance novels or write a romance novel, or I should write street lit, or I should write erotica, because it'll just to make some easy money. And there's a reason why I won't write or publish these type of books, and the main reason is they don't reflect the mission of the SJS Direct imprint, and they don't reflect the mission that I'm trying to promote as a publisher and a writer. Um, I do not agree with. I don't mind writing romance if it meets a certain standard, like in the case of the Cassandra Cookbook slash A Recipe for Success, where I'm trying to make a point about black business, group economics, and preserving black businesses and supporting black owned businesses. Now, I wouldn't mind doing a romance in that way, but what people want me to write is a, you know, single successful black woman who can't get a man, or, this dysfunctional female who's being attacked, and, the captain comes and saves them. The Tyler Perry model slash Terry McMillan, Lee Daniels model for storytelling. And I really don't find writing those type of stories to be very creative. One, because other writers have already written over a dozen stories in that same fashion, and two, I just I find it I would find writing those kind of stories no challenge to me as a writer. Um, when I try to do stories, I try to do things out of the box. I try to do things very differently, and this is what a lot of people have told me in the feedback for the stories that I've written, that your stuff is Shawn, your stuff is really different. It's very unique, and this is what I'm trying to go for as a writer. I'm trying to really do something a little different with the storytelling, do something a little different with the story paradigms, and really diversify the African American fiction out there. I don't like writing the same story over and over again, because sooner or later you start looking at it and going, I wrote this story before, and it's no challenge for me as a writer. It doesn't really help me build my craft up. I'm always looking to do different types of stories, but in the case of romance novels, because it becomes really formulaic and predictable, and it's just not something I like to do. I don't like writing the same stories over and over again. I don't like writing the same. If I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to do it like A Recipe for Success, Cassandra Cookbook, where I do something unique with the premise, and I do something unique with the concept, and I, put a little bit of my own distinct style on it. But when it comes to other things like street lit, I don't agree with that whole genre of fiction. It's a lot of it is emotional writing to me. There's no structure, there's no form, um, and the story paradigms are pretty dysfunctional. And plus, they just don't reflect my core values. I grew up in the South Bronx during the crack epidemic, and the post heroin from the 70s era. I lived right next to the Metro North Railroad tracks in the South Bronx. I saw plenty of heroin addicts and crack addicts, and I saw these people suffering, um, by their own hand, mind you, by their own hand. I'll say that, but I don't believe in promoting those type of values. Again, street lit goes against my core values. It goes against my mission as a publisher, and having seen the damage that drug dealing and living life on the street by living in the South Bronx for all of my life, I don't want to promote those type of dysfunctional values, um, in my work. I've lived around this all my life, and I would like to do more positive stories about the black experience, more positive stories about black culture. I know how rich black culture is, and I'd rather give you something completely different and something completely unique, rather than continue to tell you a story that you've already seen on the 6 o'clock news a dozen times. Um, I went to school with drug dealers. They were in my class when I was at Park West High School and at Taft High School. And I don't want to glamorize that lifestyle. I don't want to glamorize um, the way these people live, because I live around I live around this type of thing, and it's just utter dysfunction. It's utter chaos, and I don't want to promote that. I don't want to make it look like something that it isn't. It's just, again, I live around this right now, and it's nothing but chaos. It's nothing but insanity. It's not something you want to be around or be a part of. It's not a lifestyle that people sell it as. And again, I live around this every day, so I know what it is. I grew up around this, and it's not something I want to promote as you know the way it is, because I, even though I lived around drug dealers, thugs, gang members, all that stuff, it was not a part of me. Like I said, you can live in the ghetto, but the ghetto doesn't have to be a part of you, and it's not a part of me in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't raised with those type of values, and I don't want to promote those type of values in my work. That's not something I want to do, and that's why I do not write street lit. That's why I don't want to write it, and that's why I don't care to even have anything to do with it. Again, people suggested I write that type of story um, just to make a quick dollar, but my core values, my ethics, I can't do that. I can't compromise my mission as a publisher, my mission as a writer, just to make some fast dollars. My no, I just can't do that. Um, if I do write a story talking about urban stuff, it'll be like a social commentary, like your Spray 'em Up screenplay, where I made a social commentary about how the parallels between terrorists in Iraq and drug dealers in the South Bronx. Then that's where I'll. But it won't be a street lit story glamorizing drug dealers and making them out to be heroes, or making the life of the dope game into some glamorous lifestyle. I mean, if when I did Larry Cherry's School of Hard Knocks, I did that. I published that book because it showed an objective view of the drug trade, of street life, and I won't write it, but I published it for Larry because he was trying to send a Christian message, and he was trying to give an objective view of the drug game, and trying to show you that it's not a life that you want to live. I don't write those types of stories. I don't want to publish, stuff glamorizing it, like I've seen with a lot of these emotionally written street lit novels. I don't like doing those type of books. I don't like promoting that type of lifestyle. I don't like glamorizing it because I lived here. I lived here in the South Bronx all my life, and I've seen stuff that it doesn't need to be glamorized and by hypermasculine and made into something that it's not. Um, and when it comes to erotica, again, I just don't want to publish that type of stuff. For me, your zines, and your other erotic black erotica writers, it comes across as repetitive, boring. Again, no real challenge to craft, no real challenge to skill. Um, because for me, writing a sex scene it's boring. It's just it doesn't add anything unless you're trying to move scenes in a story. For me, have to move the story forward, and you know writing stuff gratuitously, graphically sexual, it's titillating for the reader, but it doesn't do anything for me as a writer. It doesn't add to the reader's experience in my eyes. It doesn't really add anything. It doesn't really move the plot forward. A lot of those, when you're doing a story, you really want to do things where you're moving the story forward. You really want to build characters. You want to build character relationships, and you want to do this in a way that it moves the story forward, and it moves the story towards a satisfying conclusion. That's one of the things I did with a recipe for success. It was a romance, but it didn't have any graphic sex in it, and a lot of people really enjoyed that story. And that's one of the, and I feel that if giving the reader a satisfying reading experience is more important than titillating the reader. And that's one of the reasons why I don't write erotica. And yeah, these things make money for people like your Zanes and your Kwans and your other authors out there, but it's not what I want to produce and publish um, under the SJS Direct imprint and the SJS Direct brand. I want to do different types of stories. I want to do positive stories about the African American experience, and I want to diversify the African American book market by doing things like your African American fantasy, like the ISIS series, Temptation of John Haynes. I want to do more screen. I like doing screenplay books like You're All About Maryland's and You're All About Nikki's, and I even do some Christian fiction. Lawrence Cherry's Commencement and the sequel of Commencement, School of Hard Knocks, and the upcoming Untitled Commencement sequel. I don't mind doing those type of stories as long as they feature, a positive theme, or they are conveying information that's going to help people. And I don't mind doing nonfiction if it's positive, like, the Simp Trilogy and the Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. Um, those are the type of books I like to produce, and that's the type of material I like to produce. I really don't want to do stuff that's repetitive or redundant, stuff that other authors are doing. Because to me, writing somebody else's story doesn't make it a Shawn James story. It doesn't make it distinct, doesn't make it unique, and it's not really a challenge for me to write. And I did, I mean, I admit I did try to do a story like that a couple times, but romance stories and stuff like that, but just couldn't get into it. I started another novel, tried to do it, but it has to grab me, and it has to be different. I really like to. I'm just like I like to do different stuff. Come out of the box, give you a fresh perspective on things, and that's what a lot of the feedback that I get from other readers is that his Shawn James's stuff is really different, really unique. It's really out there. He really comes out of the box. You know, it's not like other authors out there, and that's one of the things I try to do as an author is just give you that different reading experience, and give you that different perspective so that you can take a look at the world around you and say, well, there's a different view than what I'm used to. And I feel that's very important for African Americans to see different things from different perspectives and not understand that everything is just, this one view that I've seen, the white feminist, white liberal view of black people. And it's important that we have our own view of ourselves and our own perception of self. Um, and that's one of the reasons why I publish, the books that I publish and write the stories that I write is because I really want to give people, a different view of black life and the black experience. Um, and that means a lot to me, to hear from people and have them tell me that, you do things very differently. You present, different stories about the African American experience. And I never saw things like with the Thetas. A lot of people said they never saw sororities the way that I presented it, and they never saw, sorority life the way I presented it. I presented it very differently from other writers, and a lot of people were surprised that I could write female characters so well, and I'm just a guy, I'm just a regular guy, and that I write female characters so well that they sound real to other women. Um, and that shows skill, craft, and my range as a writer. I try to give readers the best possible reading experience they can have. um, and I feel that in order to do that, I have to do stories that aren't like everybody else's. I don't like doing stories like your Zanes or your Kwans or your other writers like your Terry McMillan's. I feel that my stuff should have its own voice and it should speak to the reader in its own distinct way. And that's one of the things I pride myself on, is trying to make sure that every Shawn James story is as unique and has its own voice, and that the characters have their own voices, and that they speak to the reader, and become as real to them as their own voice. That means a lot to me, and it's one of the things I try to do as a writer. And that's when I don't want to write things that make easy money, like your erotica, your romance novels, or your street lit novels, because I really I relish challenge of doing different stories. I like doing stuff like African American fantasy because it's out of the box. It's so different. It's so unique. And I like doing, you know, nonfiction like your Simp trilogy because it helps me get information out there to help black men and other men all over the world, get their lives and help themselves take to themselves to the next level. And I like doing screenplay books. I used to like, and I mean, because it helps people, learn the craft of screenwriting and enjoy a story at the same time. That was one of the reasons why I did the All About Marilyn book, and one of the reasons I did the All About Nikki book, because it helps people of all ages learn screenwriting, the craft of screenwriting, and they're learning these skills while they're reading the story. And it's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing different types of books, and really, taking literature to the next level and showing people, how fun books can be. But these are the reasons why I just don't like doing, your romances, your eroticas, and your streetlets, because I feel African American fiction really needs to be diversified. It really needs to be different. And sometimes when you read a different book, it can just open up your mind to seeing the world from a different perspective and seeing things in a different way, and opening yourself up to challenging yourself and taking yourself to the next level. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.